All right. So I'm Doug Reitz,
And I'm Charlotte Pavelka.
and this is our program about using eBird to plan your next birding adventure. So we flew into Buenos Aires, and for reference, it's kind of at a latitude that's comparable to Los Angeles. And then we went to three separate areas. So the first area we went to was Iguazu Falls and the Ibero wetlands. Um, which is kind of similar to Miami in latitude. And this area is in the South Atlantic rainforest, and it joins the Pantanal in Brazil. The second area, then we went down south to Patagonia, all the way down to Ushuaia, which is kind of like Juneau in Alaska. And this has multiple bird habitats, including the Andes, the Patagonian steppe, and the coastal areas. And then the third area that we went to in South America was the Northwest in Argentina. And this includes the Altiplano wetlands, the Puna grasslands, and the Yungas cloud forests. So these three areas gave us a great variety in bird habitats and birding hotspots.
So how did we use eBird? Well, I knew we wanted to go to the Iguazu Falls area. And so I went to eBird, did explore, and typed in the province, Misiones. And this is the province of Misiones, Argentina. And you can see all the hotspots. The really cool thing is that these are really hot. There's over 500 species at each one of these ones that has a red dot. Okay. So now I knew that, oh, here's a spot I wanted to go. This is actually a place we're planning to travel to and stay at a lodge there, the Don Macona Lodge. And if you I clicked on that. And then I have the list. You guys are probably used to doing this a lot, but you'll see this on eBird. It usually comes up with the most recent sightings. But if you click right here on species name, it will put it in taxonomic order, which will be a lot easier for you to review the birds and learn them if they're in taxonomic orders. So the first birds in the list are the tinamous. And so when I click on the bird name, then up comes the tinamou. And I can just go through this, and this is a way for me to learn all the species that I'm going to see at this location. I may not know exactly which tinamou, but I really want to be able to, at least when I see something like this, oh, it's a tinamou, and I know what to check. So I can look at the things, I can listen to their sounds, I can see how common they are. So Doug told you we flew from Chicago to Houston to Buenos Aires to Iguazu. So that was a long flight, like 30 hours. So as you can imagine, we're pretty tired once we arrived there. So we wanted just something nice and easy to do in the afternoon. So on our first afternoon, we went to an ecotourism site, Jardín de la Pica Flores, which is picking the flowers, hummingbird in Spanish. And this house, I wish I had their yard. Their yard is with probably 300 hummingbird feeders and very richly planted for 20 years. And they now have over 15 species of hummingbirds. So these were three of our favorites from that. I really love the Jacobins. And who doesn't love euphonias?
So one of the first places that we went to was Iguazu Falls, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it's located on the border between Argentina and Brazil. And it's the largest waterfall system in the world. And for kind of reference to Niagara Falls, it's about twice as tall and about twice as wide. And this view here is of Garganta del Diablo, which is the Devil's Throat. And it was a great birding hotspot. We saw Tokukan and the plush-crested jay, among other birds there.
So we're not only looking for birds, we are into all kinds of nature and cultural things. And we hiked the Macuco Trail. Macuco is tinamou in Spanish. And we saw the very cute little coatis, maybe not so cute agoutis, And then this is a favorite of many people keep these as pets. Doug's sister actually has one for her preschool. It's a Chilean rose-hair tarantula, but it was just walking down the path. And so stopped and looked at that. And then we were driving on to the Macona Falls after that, and I was looking for some. We had stopped and we saw some monjitas. Glenn, that's monjita, not mojitas on the side of the
Mhm.
road. And we we were taking the pictures and everything, and all of a sudden I look around and I said, Doug, look behind you. And this guy was sitting there watching us in his ox cart. And so you just have to enjoy things like that as well as the birds when you're traveling around internationally. And this is a gaucho. I mean, that is the symbol of Argentina, and we saw many of them really decked out.
So the next area we went to was the Yabodi Biosphere Reserve, which is a UNESCO World Site, and to Macona Lodge. And the Macona Lodge was located within the biosphere, and it's got the largest biodiversity in Argentina. It's an incredible place. We stayed at the Macona Lodge, and one of the first things that we saw was this beautiful black-throated trogon from our deck.
So they had a lot of paths. We wandered around for hours down the multiple paths and just seeing one lifer after another, parrots and toucanets and puffbirds and you name it. In the evening, we did a thing, kind of touristy thing with the lodge, which was a fogon, which is a kind of like cooking a stew on a hot fire. We noticed this on our walk, and well, actually we smelled it and then we noticed it, and it was a bridal veil stinkhorn mushroom, and I think pretty aptly named. Now, one of the fun things we did is we took a jet boat ride up the river to Macona Falls. And this is actually one of the coolest falls I've seen because although it's only about 50 feet tall, this falls goes on in a crack in the an uplift in the earth for about 2 miles. So if you can imagine that, 2 miles on the jet boat, we're going along this. And it was great fun. And then also we saw lots of birds along the river banks too.
So we continued on to on a dirt road all the way back to the Iberra wetlands. And this was acquired by Douglas and Chris Tompkins. Douglas Tompkins was the founder of North Face, and Chris Tompkins was the CEO of Patagonia. And they acquired the farm Rincon del Socorro at the Iberra wetlands in 2001. And Doug and Chris created the Conservation Land Trust and bought and conserved more than 2 million acres of wilderness in Chile and Argentina. And we actually met Chris at the lodge when we arrived there. This is a capybara, which is the largest giant rodent in the world, and has a tropical kingbird riding on top. We also saw a whistling heron having a snake for lunch. And then this is the strange-tailed tyrant with a beautiful tail, and it's the emblem of the Iberra wetlands.
Yeah, driving to this park, the Iberra wetlands are the second largest wetland in South America after the Pantanal. And I mean, this 80 miles, and we probably saw 40 lifers right there. And just all of them were so unique and crazy that it was fun.
So we saw a number of different caracaras. So these are 3 types. The biggest is the southern caracara, and we often saw them walking along the ground, as you see here, scavenging and looking for food. The medium one is the yellow-headed caracara, and then the smallest of the 3 is the Chimango caracara, and often it hunts in large groups.
This just gives you an idea of what the Iberra wetlands look like. There are some areas that are open water, but lots of it is just this grassy field. We saw not only 50, 60 different species of birds, but we saw lots of mammals that were unbelievable, including collared peccary, viscacha. This viscacha is the size of a small dog, but it's a rodent that lives in burrows, very large burrows in grassy areas, comes out at dusk. We were coming back from a boat ride and the driver said, "Oh, I got to stop, but don't you, anyone get out of the vehicle. I'm going to get out and I will point my flashlight at it." And this is what he showed us. And this is one of the most deadly, the Rutu lancehead is one of the most deadly venomous snakes in the world. So I was glad just to stay in the van.
There was a lot of wildlife in the Ibero wetlands, including these greater rheas, which were around the grounds. And on the way in, we saw this gira cuckoo with a great crest. And then we were out with our guide walking around, and we came upon a pack of black and gold howler monkeys. And they were making noise and trying to intimidate us. And you can see this guy was sticking his tongue at us to try to shoo us away. But it's great. These are three of the ibis that we have in the, that we saw. The plumbeus has a great shaggy mane in the back. The bare-necked ibis often, we just saw out in the pasture. They often prefer open pastures and savannas like this. And then the bare-faced ibis often typically fly around in larger flocks.
Lots of times you'll see small flocks flying through, mixed flocks. And here's an example, is another mojita. One of the things, though, that is unique with their mixed flocks here is this very large bird travels with the mixed flocks. And it is the watchdog for the group. It is called the Southern Screamer. And I thought you might like to hear how it reminds the other birds that there's a predator around. So that's a pretty good reminder.
Yep. So one of the lessons that we learned from this was to always try to rent a 4x4 truck, and that's typically what we rented down there, from a name brand rental company. And unfortunately, Hertz was sold out of 4x4 trucks, and so we ended up with Wonder Rental, and we ended up with a truck with bald tires. So the first tire, number one, we got help with at Rincon del Socorro. But the second flat tire that we got, we had to use some of our basic Spanish to work with the shop and get it repaired.
So one of the things I wanted to point out to you guys in regards to eBird is eBird Mobile launched a new feature this summer, probably August, September timeframe. And so if you're using the mobile app for eBird and submitting, there's also right down in the center this little button called Explore. So here I am, and this is all the hotspots that are within 30 miles of Libertyville. So this is what I just clicked on it, and this is what I would see. You can see there's a lot of birders and a lot of hotspots in the Lake County area. We've got every little place mapped out around this area. But you can just edit and right now on your phone and pick some other place that you'd like to travel to. And either, you know, in Southern Illinois or in South America. So I picked Iguazu, and this is what came up. And you can see there's much less use of eBird and much less mapping of the sites. This is also 30 miles from a location in Iguazu. So we were driving from down south, Ibarra, and we were going to go to this little bend in the river and stay at another lodge. And so I said, well, where can we take a lunch break? And I said, yep, that looks like a great place. It's got a lot of birds. Oh yeah, it's a provincial park, Iroquois. And yeah, it's likely to have 240 species. I clicked on that. I got more details. It tells me how to drive there. And I can see, I'll start looking down the list, and that is one of my target birds, a black-fronted piping guan. And let's see, what does that look like? Yep, that's it. Isn't that a great bird? You would think that should be on your target list. Blue beak, uh, a red a red wattle, got a big white hairy eye ring. It's got a yellow mane, blue and white on its wings. Yeah, I can, and it's the size of a large chicken. It's a guan. So yeah, that's a bird I think we can all identify. So no, you don't. It's nice to sometimes have guides, but 90% of the time we did not have guides and we didn't get, I'm sure we didn't, there was many birds we didn't identify and we didn't get, but there's so many unique birds in South America like that that you can fill your bird list pretty quickly. Here's the only picture that Doug didn't take in this deck, and that is this picture of this animal. We saw it run across the road. It was the size of a small dog, and but much skinnier. And we saw it run across and we're like, what the heck is this? We can't imagine. So we asked the folks at the lodge and they told us, oh, you saw a weasel. We're thinking, weasel? No, no, no. I'm sorry. I think of a weasel as a very small little animal that's maybe, 6 inches long.
Oh.
But this is the largest weasel in the world, a tera. So that was a cool, fun sighting.
I was thinking of a mouse.
Yeah. So, Suraqua Lodge is a lodge that's only devoted to birding. They have 4 rooms and there's 2 full-time guides. And since there was only 2 rooms rented when we were there, we had our own private guide, Lorena. And what a great guide. She had recently finished a guiding degree program at the local university in nature, and she had been working at this lodge and had just studied and studied. She and knew all the birds, a story about each one, and knew exactly where on this 2,000-acre property she could find that bird. So she showed us this spot-billed toucanet, and right in front of our room she showed us this bird. Isn't that cool? It just blends right in with the tree. This is a potu, and this is the baby. Look at the little chick here. And then I think you all could name this yourself, the blonde-crested woodpecker. That's just a great blonde hairdo.
So one of the things that we got here at this at the Suraqua Lodge was a mannequin trifecta, which was really incredible. So one of the first ones that we saw was the band-tailed manakin. And we watched as this mature male on the left was dancing along the branch, doing his mating dance. And then he had his wingman here, a juvenile, that was helping out as well. And it was really fun to watch. We also saw this white-bearded manakin. And then to complete the trifecta, we got the swallow-tailed manakin as well.
I hope a lot of you have read The Feather Thief. It's a great epic story of a young guy who becomes so obsessed with fish fly tying that he ends up stealing feathers from the British Museum. And there was 5 types of feathers that he wanted to steal and he was very obsessed with. One of those was this bird, the fruit crow's feathers. And I think if you can see how glowing these neck feathers are, that you'd want to steal them, but hopefully just enjoy them in the wild. But read The Feather Thief if you haven't. Once again, we saw another trogon, and this one was one that's very locally limited, the Suraqua red-bellied trogon.
In addition to birds, we also saw butterflies and moths. And you can see this epinomi butterfly blends in beautifully with the tree in the background. And we used iNaturalist to help ID it. And it's called the cracker butterfly because it actually pops when we were listening to it. There's the firewing. And then we also saw a black witch moth, which has a wingspan of about 7 inches. And this was in our room at the Rincon del Socorro Lodge, up by the ceiling, just minding its own business, but it was quite a sight to see.
You know, since Doug and I were traveling independently, we really wanted to be up and understand where we're going and understand the culture and understand all the birds, uh, know what we're doing. And that really made our trip a lot more fun. So that's one thing I would encourage you. Doug and I read probably 7 or 8 books. We watched bunches of movies. I watched YouTube clips of birding in Argentina. But sometimes you just really need to study if you are going to do a birding trip to a location you're not familiar. And so one of the things, if you are using the uh, laptop or online, not the mobile version, the web version of eBird, if you go to explore, and then if you look at the very bottom of the page, you will see something called the sound and photo quiz. And I highly recommend it as a way to study birds in an area you're going to. You can just click what the location and what the date is, and then you can either do a photo quiz, or this would be perfect for me actually, to do a sound quiz to learn all the birds where I'm going to be monitoring in the summer in Lake County, so I could just practice over and over until I was really sure of myself. So that's a fun way to study. One of the things is, we're not going to be totally perfect, because there are over 1,000 different species of birds in Argentina. So I'm not going to know all of them. But my goal with this photo and practice and study is that then at least I'll get some idea. So, this is a earth creeper. I got the wrong one, but okay, at least I know that it's an earth creeper, and I can look in my guidebook and then decide which exact earth creeper it is.
So we left the north in Iguazu Falls and flew down to the south to Patagonia. And this area includes the Andes, the Patagonian steppe, and coastal areas for our second part.
Some of the birds were similar. These are lesser rheas. We had seen the greater rhea up north. We did a lot of hiking, bird watching while we were at it to see the mounts and glaciers. And Sierra finch is one of those families in that's kind of like sparrows here in North America, that there are so many. But some of them are very colorful and unique, and some of them are little LBJs.
We continued on to Perito Moreno Glacier, which is UNESCO World Heritage Site. And this is an advancing glacier. And for reference, this is about 3 miles across and about 560 feet high. And since it is an advancing glacier, we could watch calving on the surface of the front of the glacier here into the cold water below.
So next we went on to Chile. And we stopped at a lagoon, and this lagoon, there was probably 30-40 species between the wetlands and the lake. And, you need a little scenery with your birds. So these are flamingos and Chiloe widgeons. There were lots of grebes there too in the front. Some of them kind of remind me of our local grebes, but these are the silvery and the white tufted. Others were quite different. Look at this guy. I mean, the great grebe, and he really is big. Much bigger than if you've been out west, the Western or Clark's grebe. It's probably 50% even bigger than the Western grebes. Also, there's a lot of these shelled ducks. Which are not a true dabbling duck. They're in a separate family. This is the spectacled duck. There's also shelled geese. We saw 5 different species of shelled geese. This one is the ashy-headed. Tree runners, many different species of those. This one is one of my favorites. I just love that kind of, it's not quite a xenops. We did see one of them, but this one also has a somewhat up-curved beak. And these are as ever-present as juncos were today. Okay, tufted tyrants just everywhere we hiked.
We went hiking in Torre del Paine and went by the cuernos or horns of the Torres and the Andes here with a pack of guanacos grazing in the foreground.
We saw literally probably 10,000 guanacos
Huge number.
in South America. It's just never ending. And this is the largest woodpecker in South America, the Magellanic woodpecker. This is the male and this is the female, kind of reminiscent of the pileated woodpeckers that we have here.
And this is a view of the Torre del Paine and the Andes at sunrise from our lodge with a flock of birds flying by.
So next we started driving south. We saw a bunch of buzzard eagles throughout this area, kind of fir forest. And we headed down to the Estrecho de Magallanes, the Straits of Magellan. And we noticed these imperial cormorants from the balcony of our hotel. Then the next morning, we boarded a ferry across the strait. It was about 3 hours. And so we were able to see, it was kind of like doing a mini pelagic. And so since I've never done a pelagic, it was a great opportunity. And we picked out giant petrels and storm petrels, and of course, some albatross. Albatross, you can tell because they have these very long wings, okay? You first might initially think, just vaguely, that it's a gull, but it's not a gull because look, that's almost like a double wing compared to a gull. And this is a black-browed, which is one of the most common albatross across the world.
We continued on south and took a boat ride on the Beagle Channel, named after the ship HMS Beagle. And the Beagle Channel is about 150 miles long and about 3 miles wide. And we saw a lot of wildlife along the Beagle Channel, including this guy who was kind of showing off for the group and his buddy looking over his shoulder. And we thought we saw an eared seal, but confirmed with iNaturalist that this was also a sea lion.
We were one of two groups that they have very limited people that can go to this Martillo Island, which was a penguin colony. What fun. Quite smelly, quite noisy, but what fun to walk amongst all the penguins, predominantly Magellanic penguins, but also these cute little gentoos as well.
We saw this sign a lot in all of the parks down in Patagonia. Las Malvinas belong to Argentina. They're not that belong to Britain. We saw a lot of shrines to Gaucho Gil, who is kind of like a Robin Hood of Argentina. And then we saw these very colorful Magellanic mushrooms.
And next we headed north and we stopped at the only king penguin colony that is on the mainland. Most of the king penguins have nesting colonies either in Antarctica or neighboring islands. And so this was a unique opportunity. They've only been nesting there for the last 10 years, and they had done a wonderful job of making this into an ecotourism spot. And I just love these little, look at this dumpling, really. It's just so silly.
And conveniently, just up the road was this estancia, which dates from 1894, from the king penguin colony. And this is typical of estancias, wide open spaces with grasslands and lots of cattle. We saw the lesser rhea juvenile and the tawny-throated dotterel.
And we went on to a volcanic park, the Paliaki, birding, and we saw the Magellanic and Andean fox. We're using iNaturalist a lot for the mammals and lizards, and we're using eBird and Merlin. Driving north along the Atlantic Ocean, we drove for 200 miles and just miles and miles of steps and way more guanacos than sheep, and then the sheep outnumbered people like 100 to 1. So you can just imagine how many guanacos and sheep we saw. There was the number of people, very few. drive along the highway, and then we stopped in Estancia. It's about 5 miles back. Beautiful little place with like 5 rooms. There was only 2 of us there. So we walked all around for hours looking for grassland birds. And this is one of our favorites, this little seed snipe. And we heard it calling, and then we looked over and, oh, that's what it was looking at. That's its little chick, little fuzzball.
So we went on to Parque Nacional Monte Leon, and we came upon the elegant crested tinamou, which has got this beautiful crest. We saw a group of them. This area, Monte Leon, is the only place where pumas come and hunt the penguin colony that is at this location. And so they had signs warning for puma sightings. Unfortunately, they typically come out at night, so we didn't get to see one. Then at night we had a Malbec, which was appropriately Las Perdices, which is elegant crested tinamou.
So what did I use for field guides? I like in the field not to be carrying books. That's just like and especially when you're traveling, who wants to be carrying a lot of books? So I like to use phone apps. Argentina had, it was kind of a mess, okay? We had Aves Argentina, wonderful, but it's only 469, and when there's over 1,000 species. So that's kind of a problem. There's Birds of Argentina, has many more species, but it's just set up in the worst way for searching. I mean, it's difficult. Merlin had not yet released its Argentine pack. It released it this summer, so we were just stuck without that. Although Merlin is great for most locations. Books, there's no book of Argentina except one that was published like 25, 30 years ago that's out of print. And there's this new one that is supposedly coming, but they say it's been coming for 5 years, I've heard. But I noticed the cover is something that I recognize, and that is the Strange-Tailed Tyrant.
So the third part of our trip was to go from the south up to the northwest to Salta. And this area included the Altiplano wetlands, the Puna grasslands, and the Yungas cloud forest.
We went to a place in the suburbs of Salta and stayed at a villa that takes a lot of birding groups. And the reason why a lot of birding groups go there is because there are so many birds to see right from the balcony, like this giant ant shrike and this buff-browed foliage gleaner. Take a short walk up the stream and there's a brown-capped redstart and 30 other species in the afternoon. Next, we went to Parque Nacional Caliligua, and there this park starts at about 3,000 feet and goes up to around 8,000 feet. And so it's a Yungas cloud forest, and there is motmots, tinamous, and Doug belatedly realized that this swamp was not dried out. As he stepped out to take a better picture, pops this only like a couple feet from his feet. And so he quickly footed it back from this Yacare caiman. The next day, we did hire a local guide. We primarily traveled independently, but decided we needed to hire one person in this upper cloud forest. And so I just looked on eBird and saw who had a lot of sightings in that area, and I noticed one of the individuals was a guide, and so I contacted him and hired him for the day. We saw guans and parakeets, which we had seen ourselves the day before, but he showed us near a cliff area these very special cinnamon flycatchers. I really think those are the most beautiful flycatchers I've seen.
So you can't be in South America for 7 weeks without running into a strike. So we were heading off north, and we ran into a municipal strike by workers, and it really looked like a problem initially, but it really just turned out to be a few firecrackers and a lot of cell phone pictures. And within about 30 minutes, they let us go. But on the way north, then we saw a lot of Andean avocets, and the beautiful scenery with the spine of the Diablo. We saw domesticated packs of llamas as we drove north, and also, and here's a juvenile. And then we also saw wild vicuñas, which are similar, but a little bit smaller and thinner. And then for dinner, we had gourmet stuffed llama.
We headed to Laguna de los Pozuelos, which is another biosphere reserve. This lagoon is at 11,000 feet in elevation. And then the Andes rise another 8,000 feet above the lagoon. So it's quite an interesting location. And you could definitely see that I was getting a little bit of altitude sickness when we were trying to walk out to the lagoon. So just thousands and thousands of birds out here. You know, all kinds of geese, shorebirds, ducks, and then 3 species of flamingos. So these were the Andean flamingos. There was also the Chilean flamingos, and there's also the James flamingo, which is much smaller. And we were driving out. There'd been we got a little bit of rain on us, and we saw this cute little burrowing owl. Burrowing owls and kestrels are more common in South America than they are here in North America. I saw more kestrels than I've seen in I don't know when. But we saw this little burrowing owl, and he was looking at a tuco that was peeping out that he tried to capture, but the tuco was faster. But then he was sitting there, and then all of a sudden he decided, wow, he had too much water on his feathers, and he did a little dance for us and shook out his feathers.
We saw a group of noisy burrowing parrots that landed near us and made a racket. And this is some of their calls. They typically like to nest in burrows and sandstone or limestone cliffs. So we really enjoyed seeing this group.
So one of the things is we had a species of bird that we were really wanting to find. We had looked for it all over Patagonia in the rivers, and this was almost our last day in Argentina. So we were like, okay, I'm gonna look on eBird. I've got to find somewhere. I found somewhere where they had seen some maybe about a month ago. So I said, surely maybe we can find them. So we drove there. It was along a river. We stopped. We got out. We looked. We drove. We stopped. We looked. We got out. This went on for 2-3 hours. We were like, oh, we're not going to get this. But then Doug stopped. He said, oh, just get out. And I got out, I peeped over the edge, and what did I see? Yep, that's my target bird, the torrent duck. And as their name is called, the torrents, they only live in really very strong cascading rivers. And so here you can see them swimming. Look how they are adapted for this. They're not a dabbling duck. Okay, look at these feet. I mean, huge webbed feet. Look at the tail. It's like a rudder. It's totally stiff. Okay, and this is the female, and this is the male, and this is the juvenile. So what a cool bird. And that's the kind of things that everyone hopes to find.
We're really happy to see that. We got a chance to see the great Black Hawk, and we were out walking around dusk, and all of a sudden a bird landed on the trail in front of us, and it turned out to be a scissor-tailed nightjar, and you can see the long scissor tail on this, and somehow I got a picture of it in the dusk. And then we had drying chili peppers on the side of the road.
So many hummingbirds. This is one of our favorites, the red-tailed comet, and we just happened to see it feeding its nestlings.
And many birds were in the Enchanted Valley, and this is the appropriately named bare-eyed ground dove. We also saw the yellow chin spinetail, which has a beautiful, cool tail. And then the rather ugly large hummingbird, which has a wingspan of about 8.5 inches and is about the size of a northern cardinal.
And we are birding, but it's nice to take into some scenery as well. The variable hawk here on a Cardones.
And this is the Enchanted Valley, and this is the long, beautiful, winding road that we took through the valley. But we were hiking around at the top, and what flew overhead was this beautiful Andean condor, and we had a great chance to get a good look at him.
And so we had a lot of fun. We saw many places. We went to many wineries and everything, and we did it mostly ourselves. And so we got 375 birds. That was a lot. You would have got maybe twice as many if you'd work with a guide, but you would have missed the fun of learning all the different species and learning them. So thanks, and we're going to turn it over to your questions at this point. So just start putting them into the chat.
I think everybody is in awe here, Sharon, Doug, and I know I was in awe just getting the few pictures that you sent me while you were on the trip. But can you hear everybody clapping in the background? They're all muted. Clapping for you. Wonderful, wonderful presentation.
Great.
So we're getting any questions here? Let's see. You can probably see them. Let's see.
Go to the
Chat. Let's see. Oh, how long was your trip?
7 weeks. So it was about 2 weeks at each location with a lot of travel time as well.
It looks like Bill Heck, who joined on, who's with National Audubon on the board, has a rhetorical question. How did you get that close to those torrent ducks?
Torrent duck. Yeah. Yeah, that was amazing. It was one of our target birds, and we were just so thrilled to be able to see that one. And we almost gave up, but really had a great look at it.
There's a great question. Did you see any of our breeding birds wintering?
No, I don't think so. Now, some of the birds are ones that do travel, like the giant albatross. Not the giant, the black-browed albatross. They will travel the whole globe. And some of the others are local, like the kestrels. There are red-throated, red knots. We looked for them, but did not find them.
Oh, okay. Question, what equipment did you use to spot the birds?
Just binoculars. We have a very basic spotting scope, which we didn't use much. So we don't have that fancy of gear.
Yeah, and I just had an 18 to 300 millimeter zoom lens, and so that was really how I took most of my
Doug, we like to hike a lot, so he doesn't like to have the very large ones that would probably be better for photography. So that's not generally that's kind of on the side.
Yep.
Yeah. So when's your next trip?
Oh, we're always traveling, and we hope you guys are too. So now we're traveling around the U.S. much more, but we camp very, very independently, okay, where we don't have much interaction, and so we feel it's very safe. So we've been doing that and just traveling around locally. So, but I would encourage everyone, just get out there, explore someplace new, And eBird is really great because it can help you figure out where you want to go on your next little outing.
And in my lack of introduction, which I figured people had read a number of times, is that Sharon and Doug are on the board of Lake County Audubon. So you will see them when we ever come back together in meetings, and you can talk to them directly about some of their adventures and maybe compare them with some of yours. I'm sure some of you have had some that would be great to talk back and forth. And maybe we could even do one meeting sometime where people do little tidbits of their trips and combine them. So
one thing I would like to say is if many of you have been getting our new email, is if you have some pictures that you take around the area, send them to me, send them to Lake County Audubon at Gmail, and we'll be glad to share them with the group.
I see a question here.
Yep.
What was the name of the 2-3 mile long escarpment with water from a geologist?
That's Makona Falls.
Yeah.
Makona.
Makona, and they call them the Saltos in Spanish. And they're kind of a little bit shorter, but they're really long and they're very unusual. And they just have a huge amount of water volume. So it's really cool geological feature.
I thought there's a question. You crossed from Argentina into Chile.
Yeah, we did it 5 times actually. So we went back and forth and back and forth. And yes, it is a pain in the rear, and you have no idea what to expect because each one is very different. One of them was so annoying that they made us take, even though we're stopping and like you're driving to Canada, right? In your truck and you're going across the border. They made us take every piece of luggage and take it inside and put it through a airport scanner, and then goes in a line with 4 different stops to check different things. And so that was just the one side. That was the Chile side, but we also had to go through the Argentina side on that same side. So definitely plan about 2 hours for every border crossing.
Yeah.
We have somebody on here. We have a number of people who've been down that way all the way to the bottom, I imagine. But John Westman's on here. John, if you unmute and you want to just tell him what your daughter does at the bottom when she goes down to the bottom of the Patagonia.
Well, she was working for the U.S. Antarctic system.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And the boat would usually leave out of Punta Arenas.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go across the Drake Passage to the peninsula, to the Palmer Station over there. And they would do everything from sea coring to penguin surveys to fish surveys. And then the other trips, they would fly to New Zealand, take another boat and go down to McMurdo and go down to East Antarctica. And that's where they did a lot of the tagging of the emperor penguins. They would kind of get a big garbage can. They would get one. They would put a little tag on their wing as by pairs, that they would be able to track them all winter. So she's did that for 9 years now. She's raised a little one, but everything from fish to sea coring to penguins.
Cool.
Most of the birds they saw were like albatross at sea.
Yeah.
But it was quite an adventure. Unfortunately, now it's really calmed down. They are forced to quarantine 3 weeks before they go down there. So they're in Punta Arenas. They have to stay on a boat for 3 weeks quarantining. And it's really slowed everything down, but so far they have not had the virus down there, and that's the biggest fear.
Yeah.
So basically cut the program in half. But But they're afraid of the scientists. When they even had that government shutdown, the scientists, some of them lost their whole 10 years of study down there. All it took was that one government shutdown. So it is going to be tough for them, but we'll see what happens. But it's been quite an adventure. But everything leaves out of Punta Arenas, and then all the cruise ships leave out of Ushuaia, which you may have seen.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. No, we were in both of those locations.
It has to do with the politics down there.
Yeah. Right.
And she's also been to South Georgia. There's some British stations there.
Right.
All right.
But great pictures. I don't think I've ever seen a bad picture from down there.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
Penguins and everything else.
So question to you, were the sun and the moon north of you?
Yeah, we did. We
Yeah.
did notice the southern sky.
The southern sky was really, really different. Yeah, with all the stars and everything, and yeah, it was fun.
Did you look for the Southern Cross?
Yeah, we could
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah,
That's
we did.
the only thing that I actually can identify in the southern hemisphere. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Uh,
It was good.
Let's see, did you write down or record findings on the spot?
oh well, I'm always using my eBird. My eBird and my iNaturalist are kind of our logging. So we would just constantly log as we went.
Yep.
Okay, very good, very good. So, any other questions? Got a couple of minutes. If somebody has some other questions or
Yep.
comments, you can unmute yourself and ask them actually. But I think is just very comprehensive and very wonderful scenery too. It's really good.
Yeah.
Well, we'll end then, and we just are looking forward to hearing all the explorations all of you guys do. You get out there and do some birding, share it with your friends, and whether it's just the next county or whether it's to another continent.